Hello everyone and welcome to ClearTalk. So in this video we're going to be looking at Kamala Harris speaking with the National Association of Black Journalists. This is the same venue kind of event thing that Trump previously talked to. So now Kamala Harris is having her moment with them. They've hit her on some questions. She does her answering. And so anyways, we're going, I have already watched through it once, but I wanted to watch it through again, to get a little bit better, like, cause I was listening to it while I was working at work. So I wanted to kind of get another look at it and then of course with y'all and talk about my opinions of the answers and whatnot. So that's what we're going to do here. Before we get started, please consider if you're liking the content and stuff that we're doing here, please consider subscribing, like, share, all that good stuff. And if you want to check out my other channels and stuff, JMD Drummer, JMPLAY, JMDPLAY. So my drumming channel, I've got like 70 plus 75 80, can't remember now, or so covers that go back like 10 years or so. You can check those out. Plus, recently gotten into doing some reactions and stuff to music, and that's going fairly well. So if you want to check that out, and of course, JMD Play is where me streaming games and stuff, mostly Fortnite, but I do have plans for others. And then you can check out Discord there. That's got for all of them. There's a in my Discord. There's a whole they're sectioned out for each channel. So there's categories under each one of them that you can look at and engage in or whatever. If you'd like to do a one-time donation there, and then of course there's a subscription up there. Oh my gosh, sorry. You can do that there. $3 a month is the low tiers. If you'd like to just to help out or whatever. I'm still developing the tiers for JMD Play and this channel. So bear with me on that one, but I do plan to have them completed by this weekend. Yeah, that's that. You don't have to though. If you want to just stay, if you just want to watch them for free right here on YouTube, no problem. But anyways, so let me get swapped over here to our main event. We're gonna have it full load. So I've been doing my reactions and stuff on JMD. With me way down here at the bottom, so I'm not like obscuring anything, kind of staying out of your way, hopefully, but also able to talk to you. So, anyways, let's check it out.
Madam Vice President, thank you so much for doing this and making the time.
Of course.
Just a little bit busy right now. We want to start on an issue that Americans across the country say is their number one concern, and that's the economy. A question that has been asked of you and everybody that's on the Democratic side is whether or not voters are better off now than they were 4 years ago. Are they better off now than they were 4 years ago?
So when we came into, well, first of all, let me just say it is good to be with the National Association of Black Journalists, and I thank you for the work you do and that your members do every day. It is very important that we ensure that this organization and your members always have the resources and the platforms to deliver the voices that must be heard. So I thank you for hosting me today. 4 years ago, when we came in during the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. We came in during the worst public health epidemic in centuries. We came in after the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. And a lot of it due in large part to the mismanagement by the former president as it relates to COVID and obviously January 6th. And we had then a lot of work to do to clean up a mess. As of today, we have created over 16 million new jobs, over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs. We have the lowest Black unemployment rate in generations. We have invested in small businesses, and they're to the benefit of many people, but including black small businesses, some of the highest rate of creation of new black small businesses in years. We have done the work of capping the cost of prescription medication for our seniors for issues like insulin. And again, I'm speaking to the black journalists who care about all people, but in particular, I'll talk about the impact on black people, where we know black folks are 60% more likely to be diagnosed with diabetes. And we have now finally capped the cost of insulin for our seniors at $35 a month, capped the cost of prescription medication for our seniors at $2,000 a year, because we, unlike the former president who promised to do it, we finally have allowed Medicare to negotiate drug prices against the big pharmaceutical companies. And these are just some of the accomplishments. Is the price of groceries still too high? Yes. Do we have more work to do? Yes. And I will tell you, I do believe that I offer a new generation of leadership for our country that is about, in particular, turning the page on an era that sadly has shown us attempts by some to incite fear, to create division in our country, and to do the work that is about bringing some level of optimism and, dare I say, ambition about what I know is possible in our country. And so my plan for the economy includes what I imagine and believe and call an opportunity economy. What we can do to grow an opportunity economy where all people have access to the resources to compete, to apply their incredible work ethic, their ambition, their aspirations, and their dreams, and actually not just get by, but get ahead. And I can talk in more detail about it, but specifically, I'll mention a few things.
Yeah.
One of the big issues that affects people right now in terms of the economy and their economic well-being is we have a shortage of housing supply. It's too expensive. People can't afford to buy a home. You know, we grew up, our parents, where they had the ability to somehow believe the American dream was attainable. Not so much for younger working people. And I recognize that. So my approach is a new approach, which is to say, let's just take this and deal with it head on. And part of my approach is to say, I'm going to employ and engage the private sector, in particular home builders with tax credits, to give them the incentive to create new housing, 3 million by the end of my first term, and understanding that not everybody is, handed a silver spoon, but works hard and is trying to save up for a down payment. Part of my plan under my opportunity economy is to give first-time home buyers a $25,000 down payment assistance so they can just get their foot in the door to be able to then engage in what will prove to be their opportunity to build intergenerational wealth. And here's my personal experience coming at that. I grew up a middle-class kid. My mother was hardworking. She raised me and my sister Maya. She saved up. And it was only by the time I was a teenager that she could afford to actually buy her first home. And I know, and I identify with, I know where I come from.
Madam Vice President.
And I know, but I'm just going to finish. I know that so many people work so hard and should have the opportunity to just get their foot in the door. Again, so it's not just about getting by, but getting ahead. Please.
Okay, so real quick. Okay, so we, this is something that she is. Okay, overall, I feel like that was a good. The overall, like, presentation of that right there was actually pretty good. She didn't really stumble over herself at all. She's clearly, in this, she's clearly done some work, especially between the last little solo interview and then this right here, where she's kind of honed in a little bit, at least in her answers. And I think that's pretty much, from what I remember watching this before, watching this yesterday when it came out, that it was she seemed to not really stumble anywhere. She was pretty much, she had her answers down, or at least had her thoughts around how she was going to answer certain questions. I think there was a few questions that she may not have been expecting somewhat, but or but she still answered them fairly well, from what I remember. So, but anyways, specifically though, everything she said there, she's basically, she's trying to drill out, because it's constantly being said that she has not put out plans. You hear from the right all the time from Trump. She has no plans. She has no plans. She doesn't know when she whatever. And she's clearly placed out this economy plan weeks ago. And she's steadily, every time she gets the chance, she's trying to drill that out. She's trying to drill it out so that you can remember, so that you catch on. And whenever you hear, you know, Trump, Vance, or whatever, talking about she doesn't have any plans, you can't help but be like, well, I mean, we've heard her several times say she's got this, this, and this, and this. So, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's not a whole lot of plans, but there are plans. I mean, you can't argue that there's not. So she is drilling that out, trying to get, trying to put a little narrative around it to help it be soaked in a little bit better, understand it a little bit better. And of course, she is, talking to the Association of Black Journalists. Okay, so she's also been, and you'll see that throughout here and there. She's trying to be specific to the Black, community, in some of her answers, which is perfectly understandable in this situation. That's what she's trying to, explain and appeal and, give a direct, response to. In reflection of Trump doing this, this is where Trump came on, and this is where he frequently bashed her every which way he could, where he questioned her race and all that, and different other things. So in contrast, so far, I mean, this is much more sensible. And from, this whole entire interview, from what I remember and could like take in as I was listening through it the first time, was sensible. That's, it was, there was only one particular area that I really did hone in on while I was working and really tried to hear, and that's when she speaks on Gaza. That particular area frustrated me to no end. I'm just completely disclaimer. So when we get there, we'll talk about that. But overall, though, the rest of the interview was good, from what I remember. So we're going to continue with the next question. Like I said, that I saw no problem with that entire area. That the whole answer there, to the first economy question. I think they kind of tried to extend on this a little bit here in the next question, if I'm not mistaken.
I'd like to ask you more about the opportunity economy. Housing is a part of it, as well as expanding the earned income tax credit, financial support, as you mentioned, for first-time buyers, and a $50,000 tax deduction for startups and small businesses. But I want to talk to you about the squeeze that millions of Americans are also dealing with.
And she in particular really does, like, they all three do to a degree, but she's in particular really does drill Kamala. Like these were not just softball questions. They really tried to almost aggressively at times, particularly her. And I don't know the ones doing the questions. I don't really know who they are. I'm just honestly, but she particularly really aggressively at times, like, is trying to get her to answer a certain specific thing or something. And there, I would say there was at least once or twice where she didn't completely like do a very good job of like fully answering it, but we'll get there.
Impacts their ability to work and make money, and that is child care and elder care. And it's a squeeze for millions of people.
This was an interesting
In
question
some parts
here.
of the country, it costs more for childcare than for rents. I think
That's right.
Bloomberg recently reported an average of $33,000 a year. So I'm just wondering, you mentioned that in your opportunity economy, a child tax credit, but that's just one part of an ecosystem.
Right.
Please tell us what plans
And
will
I
you
do agree
propose
with
to
that.
guarantee that families can actually afford child care and elder care?
So to your point, it is sadly the state of affairs in our country that working people often have to decide to either be able to work or be able to afford childcare. Like they can't afford childcare and actually do the work that they want to do because it's too expensive and it doesn't actually level out in terms of the expense versus the income. My plan is that
Very
no
much true.
family, no working family should pay more than 7% of their income in childcare. Because I know that
And she reiterates this later on as if this is like a plan, as if this is like a policy, which is something I haven't really heard. But she almost like drills on that specific, that 7% thing, as if it's kind of a policy. Now, I'd have to do some research to like figure out what the average is currently to see how much this that she's saying 7% differentiates from what's average, like nationwide. I feel like it's certainly more than 7%. Probably more like 15%, I would think. But or even more. But this is something that I did specifically remember her talking about, and she, like I said, she even doubled down on that a little bit later on in this answer.
when you talk about the return on that investment, allowing people to work, allowing people to pursue their dreams in terms of how they want to work, where they want to work, benefits us all. It strengthens the entire economy. We saw, for example, during the pandemic what happened. And it sadly has dissipated as a conversation that we need to resuscitate, which is the number of women that had to leave the workforce because of a lack of child care and home health care. And so many of our families, and in particular women, end up carrying the responsibility. Men do too, of course. What we call people who are in the sandwich generation.
Exactly.
Who have young children and are also taking care of their parents. And it is just absolutely too expensive for them to be able to work and do that. So my plan is not only about 7% of income for working people. For
Doubling down there.
But also, we need to do better for our child care providers and our home health care providers in terms of ensuring that they receive the wages that they deserve based on the dignity of their work. I have spent time with home health care providers, and their work is some of the most taxing work you can imagine. And I actually,
That's
when my
just true.
mother was sick with cancer, did a lot in terms of taking care of her. And the work that is about taking care of a loved one, in particular an elder, is extraordinarily heavy in terms of the emotional toll, the time it takes. And we do it because that is what we do. But not everyone has the ability to take time from work to do it. And they need help. And we need to make sure we have home health care workers that can help them. But I want to also get back to the earlier point that you made about extending the child tax credit. So part of my new approach is we need to expand the child tax credit. And so part of my plan that is under an opportunity economy is to extend and expand the child tax credit to $6,000 so that young families in particular, for the first year of their child's life, which is an extraordinarily important time in their development, have the resources to be able to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy children's clothing, and not have to worry about whether they're going to be able to meet their other needs. And I don't need to remind anybody here, especially these esteemed journalists, but when we expanded the child tax credit a couple years ago, we reduced black child poverty by half. And so again, if you talk about
Really
the
reduced
benefit,
all
and
child
if you think about the
poverty,
benefit
but she
to the
was
economy
specifically
overall, it strengthens our economy. to do things like pay attention to affordable child care, affordable home health care, and extending the child tax credit.
Madam Vice President, black men, as you know, are
Okay, so like I said, I drew it out there. You know, the 7% thing on child care. I don't know that almost come across to me like that was a policy. Now she didn't specifically state that as a policy, but it come across as factor how she doubled down and even I tripled down there. It comes across as a policy, something that now how how she's going to manage doing that, how anybody, administration manages doing that, along with how she spoke of trying to make sure that childcare workers and home workers, like for the elderly and stuff, are getting paid properly. That's, and she didn't really explain or go into depth there, honestly, that she just didn't. She talked a lot of fluff about how good it would be, how good it is to help that and make sure that they, work and that they're there, which, if you are paying them well enough and giving them enough incentive to do the job, then it's like it come across as like giving the incentive for there to be more people to go into that field. Like there's and that could be very possible that there's kind of a shortage in that field, to make it to have more people there available, so that then helps out people who are trying to take care of their elderly parents or whatever, but also having to work because they're having to pay for themselves or the child, and the sandwich generation thing there. There again, there's no detail there. That's something that I think certainly needed to be expanded on. If she's, I don't feel like she did. But the 7% thing is interesting. And we'll see if that, here and the following weeks or whatever, maybe another interview or something else that can be expanded on. I mean, I'm sure as other people are getting, seeing this and they're like, okay, we need to get her to talk a little bit more on this. We need to get her to talk, people, more people push on it. Hopefully we can get a little bit more clarification. In this context, she said it. They really didn't then go any further. They're about to jump into a whole another thing. So, but that's something that I certainly do hope and see that somebody will push her a little bit more on it at a later date, the next interview, or even maybe we could hear it in a following rally, this week, who knows. But hopefully that is something that can be pressed a little bit on. But let's continue.
closely watch Voting Block. You've hosted black men at your residence.
Yep.
You have engaged black men and centered them in your economic opportunity tour. But polling shows that some black men, particularly young black men, are considering voting for Donald Trump, and they see him as better for the economy. What is your message to young black male voters who feel left out of this economy, and how can your economic policies materially change their lives?
So I appreciate the spirit of the question.
Good
but
question.
I'll tell you,
Because the data currently showing that while she is having pretty high support from black women, for black men, her support is, I think she's gained some, but it's still like it has pulled some from Trump. Like Trump, there's been this for whatever reason, this progression of black men voting for Trump. It's not like it's like I think 18%, something like that, where I think normally it's around 10%, like on average in previous elections and stuff, somewhere around there, and it's around for about 18%. Since she's came into the race, that I think that has come down from slightly higher That's what it's at currently. I think is 18, or maybe I've got that wrong. Maybe it has dropped a couple of points from 18. Either way, it has dropped a little bit, but not to the extent that you would have thought, and it's certainly not to the extent of what previously it was. So there's still a higher, and I think that's like black vote all around, not just men, but specifically men though is the higher percentage of that 18% than women. She's got a pretty strong support from black women, but the black men support is lacking in the respect for the percentage that has stated that they're voting for Trump or they're leaning towards Trump or whatever. Anyways.
Often been asked this question in a way that I've had to respond by first saying that I think it's very important to not operate from the assumption that black men are in anybody's pocket. Black men are like any other voting group. You got to earn their vote. So I'm working to earn the vote, not assuming I'm going to have it because I am black, but because the policies and the perspectives
approach
I have understands what we must do to recognize the needs of all communities. And I intend to be a president for all people. Specifically as it relates to what we need to do, to your point around economic opportunity. Yes, I started way before I was at the top of the ticket at what I called an economic opportunity tour, focused on black men. Understanding that, for example, we have so many entrepreneurs in the community who do not have access to capital, but they've got great ideas, an incredible work ethic, the ambition, the aspiration, the dream, but don't have the relationships necessarily. So my work has included, as vice president, getting billions more dollars into community banks, including working with the big banks to do that, so that we can increase access to capital for our small businesses, for our startups. Part of my plan under my economic opportunity plan going forward is that right now, startup entrepreneurs, small businesses only get a tax deduction of $5,000. Nobody can start a small business with $5,000. So I'm expanding that to $50,000. Understanding, again, that when people have the opportunity to have the resources to get started, they're going to put the good ideas, they're going to put the hard work into it. And part of what I also know is that our young black men, our black men, just like any group of people, anybody, our small businesses are really the backbone of our economy overall. And when they do better economically, we all do better. Part of my work is about understanding what we need to do in dealing with, for example, the historic inequities that have faced the black community around home ownership, right? I don't have to go through the history with anybody here about what that has meant in terms of redlining, what that has meant in terms of biases and home appraisals, and what the impact it has had on stemming the opportunity to build intergenerational wealth because of those obstacles. So part of the work that I have done and will continue to do is identify, speak truth about those obstacles, and address them. Another example is medical debt. 1 in 4 black families or individuals is more likely to carry medical debt than others. So part of my perspective, and as vice president, part of the work that we have done is to say that we're going to eliminate medical debt from being on your credit score. Because
this has actually started with
medical
Biden.
Debt worked against your credit score, and people know their credit score like your weight, right? You know that number. And the difference between what that number is and what it needs to be is the difference between you being able to get a car loan, a small business loan, or even a leasing on an apartment. And so part of my approach is understanding the obstacles that traditionally and currently exist to allow anyone, including black men, be able to achieve economic wealth. And I'm going to tell you, I don't think it is sufficient to just only talk about economic policy around reducing unemployment. It is an important marker, and I'm proud of the work that we've done thus far. But it should be a baseline there. Everybody's working. The point is,
Good point.
do people have an opportunity to build wealth? If that's what they choose to do, if that's what they want to do. And a lot of my perspective as we go forward is just that. I believe that there are a lot of opportunities that are available to the American people if we just see people and understand what they want for themselves and their families, and then meet them where they are.
Madam.
I feel that that was a fairly good answer. She spoke to the needs of, from the economical stance of, a black man, young black men or whatever, trying to build that's been an issue, when it comes to the systematic racism and stuff that's built into all these different things. Even though morons like Walsh or whatever, will argue against this. It is true. It does still exist, even if it's minimal. Even if you want to give that it's much more minimal than what it used to be, and that there's a good argument for that. But to say that it just absolutely doesn't exist anymore is just complete asinine. I mean, there's been study over and over again that shows where given the exact same data points, everything, a black person versus a white person getting, say, a loan or something like that with the exact same credentials, exact same everything, and the white person comes out with a better deal than the black person does. It's just, it just is. This is the case, and it has been over and over and over again, and that's just what she's speaking to here, is how disproportionately, on average, black people just don't get as good of deals on different things as far as loans and stuff like that, which already puts them at a slight handicap when it comes to creating a business or buying a house or a car or whatever the case, trying to build that intergenerational wealth. That has always been a problem. Yes, it has been a bigger problem in the past, and little by little it has gotten better, but to argue that it just doesn't exist anymore is just stupid. It does. So what she's speaking to here is, just little things like that. Now, granted, that helps everybody, but like she said, you help one person, you help us, and you help all. When you're speaking to lifting up, the lowest people in society, whoever that may be, the ones that have the biggest struggles based on whatever the case, in the country, whether it's race or whether it's, class stance or because there's lots of different people that, for whatever reason, they're either born or because of the system subjected to a harder, they're way behind the starting line, right? So it's just that much harder for them to actually be able to build any type of wealth. When you're starting from nothing or less, like she said, you're not given a silver spoon like Trump. So, and then squandered all that, losing it over and over again, bankruptcy after bankruptcy. I mean, so it's that's what she's speaking to. The 50,000, I think, is great if she can actually pull that off. If she can pull that off, that would be one hell of an economic, plus for her. And right now, truly, she is actually winning. Or she is, well, she's not winning, but she is gaining momentum, even on the topic of the economy, with the average voters. This is something that Trump has been winning on for whatever reason. He has had, this has been his bread and butter is the economy. But little by little, she's gaining ground in that. But the more she proposes these things, and it's really starting, and it's being explained, and she's, it's really starting to soak into some people's heads, and that doesn't sound too bad. Yeah, it's probably not everything that could fix, certainly not, they're not anything that's just going to fix everything, but just baby steps. You got to start somewhere, and the more the economic experts come out talking about, just the only thing Trump wants to do is just tariffs. He's just tariffs, tax, lowering taxes, which when he says lower taxes, he's talking about the rich. He's not talking about, the little man. Okay. He's talking about the rich. Corporate taxes, he wants to drop them down even more to 15%. It's ridiculous. He wants, it's all about helping out, his people. So it's tariffs, taxes for the rich, and then the only other thing he has to argue on is immigration and demonizing immigrants coming to the country. It's all the fear-mongering thing. It's all he's about. It's all he argues for. This is a good response. This was a good response, in my opinion. Let's continue.
Vice President, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about the war in Gaza. Mm-hmm. You've called for...
This is where... Let's just see.
For a ceasefire hostage deal and a two-state solution as an end to the war for many months now. And while you've expressed support for Israel to defend itself, a two-state solution and a ceasefire are at odds with what Benjamin Netanyahu has said is their right to defense. If it matters, as you say, how Israel defends itself, where do you see the line between aggression and defense? And our power as Israel's ally to do something?
Okay, a lot to unpack in what you just said. So let's start with this. I absolutely believe that this war has to end, and it has to end as soon as possible. And the way that will be achieved is by getting a hostage deal and a ceasefire deal done. And we are working around the clock to achieve that end. Stepping back, October 7, 1,200 Israelis were slaughtered, and actually, and some Americans, by the way, in that number, slaughtered. Young people who were attending a concert, women were horribly raped. And yes, so I have said, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And,
but Madam Vice President, I think my ask is the difference between aggression and defense.
No, but it's important to put it in context, which is what I'm doing, and I'll get to that. And so how it does so matters. And far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed, women and children. We have seen with horror the images coming out of Gaza, and we have to take that seriously. And we have to agree that not only must we end this war, but we have to have a goal of a two-state solution, because there must be stability and peace in that region, inasmuch as what we do in our goal is to ensure
she meant
that
region.
Israelis have security and Palestinians in equal measure have security, have self-determination and dignity.
A question for you on that, though. What levers does the U.S. have to support Palestinians in their right to self-determination? And
okay, so she didn't really answer what she was asking. She did her, and then she really just went on from it, because she was talking about, she wanted her to speak more on, like, the level of aggression, and whether it was, a respected level of regression in contrast, like, and she really didn't, I mean, really go on it. I'm going to save, I'm going to, I feel at this point, it's frustrating. It's frustrating for anybody like me who wants to see the ceasefire stuff handled, wants to see our administration get aggressive and tell them to, cut the shit out, like force it on them. Which we could do. It's been done in the past, and we could do it now. By whatever means, we have plenty of avenues that we can do this and get it ended. But Biden just does not. And while I feel like she probably internally and morally, I think she does feel the need for it to happen. I don't think she's being disingenuous, like, for herself. But when she speaks of it in the manner of her with Biden and the administration and what they've been doing, like what he's been doing, it's disingenuous. To lap him in from what he has been doing, because he has not been doing shit. So he, if anything, has been allowing it to happen, allowing it, whether he'll speak and talk about it rhetorically, but there's nothing actually being done. He's not applying actual pressure. He might be giving some stern words, wagging his finger a little bit. I really don't like how you're doing this. You're making this really hard for me. But ultimately, he's just giving them a free ride to do what they want. So like I said, from her perspective, I do feel like she's being genuine to her own morals. And I feel like she had, it's been expressed through different outlets that she has been outspoken within the administration since early on. I'm back to February, January, whatever. But it's just like with the whole argument that Trump and the Republicans and everything have been saying about, oh, you've been there, why haven't you done anything? That argument, it comes down to the influence that she has as a VP. And let's be frank, she doesn't have influence. Most VPs don't. Especially when there's a president in office that, is arrogant and, has a slight ego issue, like Biden does. And so clearly he isn't being influenced by her. So she could have been, we don't really know to what degree she may have actually talked or been against certain things this whole time. And we may not know, or at least won't know until, say, she, actually wins the election or something. I think everything will come out then. And I think we'll see if there's going to be an actual change in policy, it will happen then. But I feel like right now, and it's been stated by several people, that she's kind of doing the go along to get along thing to not really upset too many people. She's trying to say enough that she feels like she's winning over or could potentially get support from the Muslim community and Arab community to some degree. And while I do think to some degree she might be doing enough, the majority of them have come out saying that they are either voting for, say, Jill Stein or not voting at all. So that is hurting her. She's trying to speak to everybody. I feel like she genuinely thinks she is, but unfortunately, in reality, it's just not the case. But there's a greater coalition that's not as big of an issue as far as helping her get elected. So in the big picture, it's better for her to, I think, and her strategy or her campaign strategy is to, toe that line of showing support for what Biden has done so that she doesn't upset that side of the aisle. I mean, that's, that side of the party, while really just sort of holding on to how she really feels. And I'm not saying that like she has some complete extreme differences or extreme disconnect from it. But I do feel like she has an opinion of how to handle the situation differently. But she's holding on to that. I feel like she's holding that close to her and not letting it be known. I'm hoping, at least. Because there has been hints, especially with the her foreign affairs person on her campaign, the one that's close to her, the one that she more or less will actually take onto her campaign if she become president. When it comes to foreign issues and stuff, he is vehemently against this. He is like hardcore for getting a ceasefire and having that diplomatic resolve. So that's the reason why there is some like touch of hope, where it's like, even though listening to her and what she says here is nail biting, it's like frustrating for someone like me. I'm holding on and reserving myself to see, and I would love for her to just come out and be like, you know what? Yes, I've been supporting what is happening, but let's just say I might have a different approach. She didn't even have to spell it out, but it would be nice for her to say something along that line. Like she could even continue to say what she's saying here, but then, when I become president, I might look at some different approaches though. Something simple like that. And that might even be enough to be like, to make me go, okay, hold on. All right, wait. We might be onto something here. Let's give her, whoa. And that may even be enough to have more of the Arab community, Palestinian community and stuff in the U.S. actually get behind her. Or, a greater percentage of them. Just something simple like that. That's all I'm saying. But of course, if she says that, then it's going to open up for all the other side of the party to just nitpick at her. Oh, whoa. I mean, even with the answer she's given right now, there's already outlets. I just saw an outlet a minute ago talking about her anti-Israel stance. What in the hell did you get any kind of anti-Israel stance in anything she just said? Just because she said an equal opportunity for preservation and dignity and everything else from Palestinians to Israelis. Just because she was basically kind of like, for future, them having an equal, existence. That apparently was anti-Israel. What the fuck? I mean, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. So, even for what I'm asking for, or what I would like her to actually say, would just fucking blow things all out. I mean, people, group outlets like what I just talked about would lose their freaking mind. And anyway, let's continue.
Is it even possible as Israel's ally?
Well, absolutely.
I'm sorry. Let me back up. Where are we here? 1808. Go back here.
Question for you on that, though. What levers does the U.S. have to support Palestinians in their right to self-determination? And is it even possible as Israel's ally?
Well, absolutely. I will tell you, I have been actively involved in, for example, meeting not only with Israeli officials, but with Arab officials to talk about how we can construct a day after scenario where we participate in ensuring those exact goals that I outlined, including as part of the principles that should be applied to those goals, that there be no reoccupation of Gaza, that there be no changing of the territorial lines in Gaza, that there be an ability to have security
You can take
in
that
the
different
region
ways.
for all concerned, in a way that we create stability, and let us also recognize in a way that ensures that Iran is not empowered in this whole scenario in terms of the peace and stability of the region. But absolutely, the United States of America absolutely has a role, which is why we have been active, in particular with the Qataris and the Egyptians, around attempting to get a deal done and get it done as quickly as possible.
But Madam Vice President, just to follow up really quickly,
But a deal's not
is there a
happening.
specific policy change that you as Vice
See,
as
they're
President of the
really
United
hitting
States
her.
would say you would do that would help this along? Because you've gotten a lot of credit for emphasizing the humanity of Palestinians. But what I often hear from folks is that there's no policy change that either you or President Biden have gone and said they would do. Is there a specific policy change as president that you would do in our helping of Israel?
We need to get this deal done, and we need to get it done immediately, and that is my position, and that is my policy. We need to get this deal done.
But in the way that we send weapons, in the way that we interact as their ally, are there specific policy changes?
Well, Eugene, for example, one of the things that we have done that I am entirely supportive of is the pause that we've put on the 2,000-pound bombs. And so there is some leverage that we have had and used. But ultimately, the thing that is going to unlock everything else in that region is getting this deal done. And I'm not going to disclose private conversations, but I will tell you I've had direct conversations with the Prime Minister, with the President of Israel, with Egyptian leaders, and with our allies. And I think we've made ourselves very clear this deal needs to get done in the best interest of everyone in the region, including getting those hostages out who, I mean, we saw the latest example of what happened with the six most recently, one of whom was an American citizen.
Let's say so. I did catch that, and it was a weird way of saying it, and it could be implied very differently. Where she said, and our allies, as if the ones she previously spoke of were not our allies, which, if you remember, she spoke of Israel before that. I don't think she meant it that way, but I think she meant more like the European nations and stuff like that, perhaps. But it did come off like it did have this sort of, it could be interpreted, let's say that way, of her not including Israel as an ally. So, that I don't in any way think that's what she meant, but I'm just saying that's that I've been surprised that I haven't seen that. I mean, I'm not saying that they haven't attacked her on that, but I haven't seen that being subscribed to her from that comment. But it was, I did, when I heard it the other day, I was like, oh, that was weird. Anyway, sorry, let's continue. But in it, she she did stress there with she was behind the 2,000 pound thing, as little, as little as that was, and the fact that that has been resumed. I mean, it it ultimately didn't impact anything. I mean, so I don't know. You could say that in her mind she's expanding upon that possibility, but I don't know. I don't know really to take from that. But she didn't really necessarily answer as far as like a new policy. She didn't. She certainly didn't answer, a different or new policy. She was just agreeing with what's current or what is currently or previously been policy within this ban. And just saying that the ceasefire deal is primary, that then would open up to other potential policies, is I think the way she was trying to say that. But anyway, let's go on.
What do you say to those that say that's not enough, that stopping the 2,000-pound bombs the one time wasn't enough, that this administration, your possible administration, has to do more?
Well, we are doing the work of putting the pressure on all parties involved to get the deal done. But
are they?
Let me be very clear also. I support Israel's ability to defend itself. And I support the need for Palestinians.
She really doesn't want to upset.
Have dignity, self-determination, and security.
She's walking this middle line
as we move forward
very
and
strong.
get a two-state deal done. But right now, the thing we need to get done is this hostage deal and this ceasefire deal. We need a ceasefire. We need the hostage deal.
She's really, really honing in on being straight down the middle. Like trying not to upset either side. But unfortunately, with doing that, you are going to upset both sides. I mean, it's kind of one of those deals where at some point you've got to make a definitive decision. Now that decision could create the opportunity for both sides to be, met as far as for an equal opportunity, which I think is what she's trying to, settle on. But you're going to ultimately have to decide against one or the other. Just, in action, to some degree at least, or at least to a degree where it's going to piss off one side or the other. I mean, just straight up. So, anyway.
I want to switch gears to racial justice, Madam Vice President. Last month, you eulogized Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee.
Yeah.
Jackson Lee's signature bill, one of a few, was H.R. 40, which would create a commission to study the history of U.S. slavery and study the issue of reparations. She introduced H.R. 40 every session of Congress, taking up the mantle from Congressman John Conyers. This is a bill that you have co-sponsored as a U.S. Senator. Yet, this has, despite the fact that this has been, similar commissions have been created on the state level and on the local level, is yet to pass in Congress, let alone come out of committee. Congresswoman Jackson Lee, Congresswoman Barbara Lee, and other advocates have called for President Biden to take executive action to create this commission. Would you, as president, take executive action to create this commission, or do you believe that it should happen in Congress?
Well, first of all, as you mentioned, Sheila Jackson Lee, she was an extraordinary leader who we just recently lost, and she was a friend and a real champion for so many issues. So I feel compelled to say that about her. On the issue of what we need to do going forward, look, first of all, we just need to speak truth about history in spite of the fact that some people would try and erase history and try and teach our children otherwise. We need to speak truth about the generational impact of our history in terms of the generational impact of slavery, the generational impact of redlining, of Jim Crow law. I could go on and on and on. These are facts that have had impact. And we need to speak truth about it. And we need to speak truth about it in a way that is about deriving solutions. And frankly, I think that we, and part of that is studying it to figure out exactly what we need to do. But part of what we can do right now is, for example, what I'm talking about in terms of building an opportunity economy, which is addressing explicitly the obstacles that historically and currently exist and dealing with them: student loan debt, medical debt, bias in home appraisals, what we need to do in terms of dealing with an issue that I have championed for years, black maternal mortality, which is the fact that black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die in connection with childbirth than other women. And we know that the reasons for that include disparities that pre-exist her pregnancy, including disparities that exist in the system during her pregnancy. So all of those things must be addressed.
But do you have a position on whether that should happen, this commission should happen through executive order or via Congress?
I think Congress ultimately will have the ability to do this work. I'm not discounting the importance of any executive action, but ultimately Congress. Because if you're going to talk about it in any substantial way, there will be hearings, there will be a level of public education and dialogue that, and I think that was part of the spirit behind the congressional action thus far, to ensure that everyone can participate in this conversation in a way that elevates knowledge about history and the reference points that that are the impetus of this conversation. Especially, again, when people are trying to deny history. When people are, so-called leaders are saying that enslaved people benefited from slavery. I mean, let's talk about the delta here in terms of the work that needs to be done. It's profound.
Madam Vice President, I want to move to Springfield, Ohio.
Okay, so she did somewhat come around to, like, she was kind of splitting that, she spoke, that it really would have to come down to a congressional, which I think she was kind of really joining that together, a commission, along with, that really kind of goes together. The commission could do the research, but ultimately it's going to come down to the, Congress doing actual work, which is true. She says she was open to executive possibilities, but ultimately she felt like, which I think you ultimately do want to come down to Congress handling a situation as far as something that's could potentially be founded in law or whatever, especially if it has something to do with money, or anything like that, if we're talking about reparations or something like that. So but she didn't really answer it the first time, but he pressed her, and I guess you could say that's an answer. She pretty much, it was pretty much as an answer, I guess. So Now we're going on to the Springfield issue, and this is where she probably, I would say, is the biggest highlight, and her attack on Trump, the biggest highlight. She probably going to be one of the biggest things she's talked about from this whole thing.
And what's happening there. We've seen school closures, parents worried about their kids leaving the home because of racist conspiracy theories that I won't repeat here, but they have been repeated by leaders on the Republican side, President Trump, former President Trump, and Vice Presidential nominee J.D. Vance. From your perspective, is this just a case of irredeemable racism that can't be mitigated by any rational action, or is this a situation in which a federal response could help this community heal? There's a question of resources and...
Well, no, I'll let you finish and then I'll speak.
No, please.
It's a crying shame. I mean, my heart breaks for this community. You know, there were children, elementary school children, who it was school photo day. You remember what that's like? Going to school on picture day? Who were dressed up in their best, got all ready, knew what they were going to wear the night before, and had to be evacuated. Children. A whole community put in fear. And I'll say a couple things about it. One, you know, I learned a long time ago in my career, having a background as a prosecutor, when you have these positions, when you have that kind of microphone in front of you, you really ought to understand at a very deep level how much your words have meaning. I learned at a very young stage of my career that the meaning of my words could impact whether somebody was free or in prison. As Attorney General, I was of California, fifth largest economy in the world. I was acutely aware that my words could move markets. When you are bestowed with a microphone that is that big, there is a profound responsibility that comes with that. That is an extension of what should not be lost in this moment, this concept of the public trust. To then understand what the public trust means. It means that you have been invested with trust to be responsible in the way you use your words, much less how you conduct yourself. And especially when you have been and then seek to be again President of the United States of America. And so I go back to, it's a crying shame, literally, what's happening to those families, those children in that community, not to mention what is happening in terms of, look, you say you care about law enforcement resources being put into this because of these serious threats that are being issued against a community that is living a productive, good life before this happened. And spewing lies that are grounded in tropes that are age-old. And look, I said it not very far from here the other day at the debate. This is not new. This is not new in terms of these tropes. This is not new in terms of where it's coming from. And, you know, whether it is refusing to rent to people, rent to black families, whether it is taking out a full-page ad in the New York Times against 5 innocent black and Latino teenagers, the Central Park 5, calling for their execution, whether it is referring to the first black president of the United States with a lie, birther lies. And look, the American people deserve, and I do believe want better than this. I do believe that. I know, the vast majority of us as Americans know we have so much more in common than what separates us. I know that. I know that regardless of someone's background, their race, their gender, their geographic location, I know that people are deeply troubled by what is happening to that community in Springfield, Ohio. And it's got to stop. And we've got to say that you cannot be entrusted with standing behind the seal of the President of the United States of America, engaging in that hateful rhetoric that, as usual, is designed to divide us as a country, is designed to have people pointing fingers at each other. It's designed to do that. And I think most people in our country, regardless of their race, are starting to see through this nonsense and to say, you know what, let's turn the page on this. This is exhausting, and it's harmful, and it's hateful, and grounded in some age-old stuff that we should not have the tolerance for. So let's turn the page and chart a new way forward and say, you can't have that microphone again.
Mic drop. Mic drop. Mic drop. That answer was probably one of the most accurate, eloquently astute answers that could have been given right there. And at the same time, without even speaking the name, drop the damn gauntlet. And that's the type of thing I've been talking about this whole time. How it blows my mind at this point in time, with all the shit that's happened over the past 8 years, that someone purposely decides to support Donald Trump. I don't get it anymore. As she said there, using the layers and facade, the image, the placement of president to spew hate and bigotry and everything else to divide people. And that is what Trump has been doing from day one. He is all about fear, all about pointing the finger. He's self-indulgent, he only cares about himself. He doesn't care about anybody else. He wants everybody else just fighting about other shit. Dividing the country. That's what he's been about this whole time. And we are our most divided selves right now because of Donald Trump. And here she is speaking about how she knows and can see that the majority of people feel like, you know, we have more that brings us together, that unifies us than divides us. Which really ultimately has been the aspirations and stuff for this country, this project, going all the way back. It's the reason why we are the United States of America. Because we notice things that bring us together more than divide us. She is speaking about the essence of America. While somebody else stands in opposition that wants nothing to do but stoke fear, stoke hate, stoke finger pointing, stoke division. But yet he's the one that's going to make America great again. Give me a fucking break. You're fooling yourself. If that's what you think, you're fooling yourself. And you've been fooling yourself for 8 years. I mean, you can like or dislike her policies or whatever. You know, you can dislike or like the fact that she is, you know, on the Democratic ticket. You can dislike or like the fact that she's been a VP and you don't like things or as the way are or whatever the case. But her ability to speak on these types of issues with respect and decency. And like I said, with the essence of what this country is supposed to be built on in comparison to the other side. And this even goes further than just Trump. This is damn near the whole Republican Party at this point. I know all y'all want to argue about, you know, woke this and woke that. You don't want to be woke. Well, you need to fucking wake up. You need to wake up and see what these people are really about. What Donald Trump is really about. What J.D. Vance is really about. What the majority of Republican politicians are really about. I'm not trying to, you know, put a whole bunch of like reverence or some kind of like, you know, I'm not speaking like, you know, the Democratic Party is great or something, because they're not. There's a whole lot of problems in the Democratic Party as well. A whole lot of problems with some of the politicians. But in comparison to the Republican Party, it is damn near night and day when it comes to one party versus the other and having the best intentions for the people of America. As, you know, if you can say on average. That was an excellent answer. And quite frankly, the highest point, I think, in this whole interview. Let's continue.
Madam Vice President, I'm switching gears again.
Okay.
Quick question. I want to talk to you about gun control. So You've said you support an assault weapons ban and universal background checks, and we actually learned during the debate that you are a gun owner. But in cities like Philadelphia, handguns are responsible for most homicides and violent crime. The most recent FBI data shows handguns were involved in 59% of murders in our country. How will you address the issue of the use of handguns? Because a push for an assault weapons ban only addresses a significant but small part of the problem.
So, first of all, yes, I am a gun owner, and Tim Walz is a gun owner, and we're not trying to take anybody's guns away from them. But we do need an assault weapons ban. Assault weapons are designed to kill a lot of human beings quickly,
yes,
and have no place, and have no place, I'm going to get to it.
Yes.
And have no place on the streets of a civil society. We need universal background checks, which, to your point about handguns, is about saying that it is just reasonable to want reasonable gun safety laws that say we should do background checks that we ought to know. It's just reasonable. You might want to know before someone can buy a lethal weapon if they've been found by a court to be a danger to themselves or others. You might just want to know.
And respectfully, we do understand that.
But you're asking
yes.
about...
I'm asking specifically about handguns, because many of those handguns aren't purchased in places.
Universal background checks apply to handguns.
Yes.
They do.
But in many instances, those handguns aren't even bought lawfully. Yes.
Which is why I also have been very adamant for years. In fact, I myself protested at a gun show probably 10, 15 years ago about the gun show loophole and why we need to close that. Because what ends up happening is that gun shows at flea markets, gun dealers are not, under existing law in the past, required to register their sales. And so you are exactly right that a lot of homicides, for example, a good number of them, I don't have the statistic in front of my mind, are committed with illegally purchased guns. And that's why we need to address each entry point in the issue, including universal background checks, closing the gun show loophole, and what we need to do as a general matter to focus not only on reaction to crime, but prevention of crime. So you're raising a very important issue that has many facets, including what we need to do in terms of reasonable gun safety laws and what we need to do around crime prevention, what we need to do around crime deterrence. But listen, I have personally prosecuted homicide cases. I have held the hands of mothers who have come to me crying, who have said, I only want to talk to Kamala, because they knew when they sat down, I would treat them with the dignity and respect that they were entitled and due about the loss of their child, often their son, to gun violence and the need to take it seriously. And we must take it seriously in every way, understanding it's not just about a soundbite. It's about a comprehensive approach that deals with the tragedy of, to your point, everyday gun violence in America. It's real. It has had a profound impact in terms of trauma that, for the most part, has gone undiagnosed and untreated. The trauma that exists in communities around the violence of losing their children, losing a brother, losing a father, an uncle. All of that must be addressed, and we have to have a holistic response to it.
Are there things we haven't thought about yet? Because every time we bring up this issue of gun violence, universal background checks comes up and a ban on assault weapons. Are there other solutions that you're also thinking about that will get at this issue?
Absolutely. For example, part of what we did with, so we, as vice president and with the president, we were able to pass the first meaningful gun safety legislation in 30 years. And part of what that involved was millions and millions of dollars to put more mental health counselors in public schools, right? Because we know that there is an aspect of this that is about treating the trauma and dealing with it at its source before it ends up manifesting itself in a problem. There is the work that we need to do that is about putting resources into communities around violence prevention. I've been a big advocate of that for years, which includes what we need to do around putting resources into community-based intervention that is not just requiring on the good people in the community to volunteer to do the intervention, but actually paying people to do it because it's a full-time job. It's about understanding what we need to do to, again, understand that, to your point, we have to have a holistic response to this issue and prioritize it instead of reacting to the tragedy that, sadly, they are too predictable. Let's all agree, enough of that. There are very few solutions that we haven't thought of. We need to put the resources into them.
Madam Vice President.
Okay, so I actually liked how she addressed that. Because as the reporter was asking, when you come to the two sides, you often have Democrats or whatever, the left, or well, mostly centrists speaking on assault rifle bans. You hear the list: assault rifle bans, red flag laws, and universal grant background checks, which I all agree with, and I think should happen. Then on the right hand side, you have all the people. That all the Republicans want to argue, well, it has nothing to do with the guns. It's nothing to do with any of that. We need to be focused on mental health. We need to, because these people are just crazy or whatever the case. And so it's all about mental health, or it's all about upping the security, or even to the extreme of saying that we just need more guns. We just need more guns in good people's hands than bad people's hands, which is the stupidest ass thing I've ever heard in my fucking life. What she's doing here is she's taking both of those issues, both of those sides, and kind of focusing them together, right? Which is arguably the best way to go about this. It's about all of these things. She spoke to the fact of, yes, it's very important to have an assault rifle ban. It's very important that we have universal background checks to make sure that there's somebody not getting a gun that doesn't need it. Which comes into the red flag kind of laws as well, and those can be expanded in different ways. But also at the same time, like she's saying, we need a holistic approach. We need to be addressing, mental health. We need to be addressing crime prevention and or deterrency, within our communities. Talking to, having these types of discussions where we're talking about, better ways to settle a conflict and violence. I mean, it's just simple as that. And that's, ultimately should start in the home, but also it can be expanded amongst, other community avenues as well. But also, like I said, like she said, that they've put in the money to have more mental, counselors and things like that in schools and whatnot, which is really, hitting at the base of, helping prevent that to not escalate, and having future things. So all of that's what she means by holistic approach. Identifying all the little intricate parts, because it's not just one, it's not just the other. It's all of these things all together. They all need to be identified. They all need to be addressed. Okay, and to act like guns are not an issue, that it's all about the people that are holding the guns. The gun doesn't shoot itself. Yes, true enough, the gun doesn't fucking shoot itself. But if you didn't have the gun in the fucking hands that pulled the trigger, this would not be a problem either. So the argument is just null. All right, there's two sides to this. There's two parts of this equation, not just one. Okay, it takes the person and it takes the gun for the situation to happen. One or the other, without the other, it wouldn't happen, right? But you can't argue that one issue is the only problem. It's both. So we need to address both of them. Okay. Same thing when it comes to, a marriage or a relationship. All right. You can't have, two people in a relationship and, say that one person is completely the problem, right? I mean, you both have to figure out, you either have to both figure out how to work with each other or whatever, I mean, there could be some degrees, I guess, where you could say, maybe that's a bad example, but my point is that you can't have two things, okay? When it comes to that, okay, that's a singular thing there. One without the other can't be, you can't say that if you only fix one, then the other is fixed. That just doesn't happen, okay? You can't say that if you fix the person, then the weapon is not an issue anymore. Okay, because the weapon is still an issue. It's still a weapon that can be used. And at any point, even when you so-called fix a person, doesn't mean that they are forever fixed and that they can't eventually snap back. I mean, look at drug addiction. You can't 100%. It's always a practice. Okay. But at the same time, even with drugs, we regulate that, right? We even ban some. So, same thing with guns. You have a right to them, but they need to be regulated. Period. And there needs to be proper, regulations put in place to help prevent these things, and we would see these type of events drastically drop. Will it ever completely go away? More likely, no. I mean, that's kind of that's a utopia that probably that you just it's just not going to happen. But the idea is to drastically reduce it, because there's country after country after country after country out there that doesn't have this problem. We're the only outlier with this problem. And we are also the one country that has the most guns as a percentage of guns to population. This is a problem. So to completely, act like, oh, guns are not the problem and we just need more of them to fix it. No. This is even with your argument of this is, that it is solely the person. Well, the problem is that the person has the overabundant access to weapons, legally or illegally. So, I mean, yes, there needs to be, all these things need to happen. So I think she did good with this question.
We want to move to the topic of reproductive access, something that you have worked and leading on both for the administration, Democrats, and now the top of the ticket. You've said that as president, you would want to codify Roe. If it came to your desk, you would sign a bill that did that. Roe protected access until fetal viability, which it also says is, quote, at about 7 months, but it may occur earlier, even at 24 weeks. So do you similarly support also codifying Roe's restrictions, which allowed states to ban abortion in the third trimester of pregnancy unless necessary to save the mother's life?
We need to put the protections of Roe v. Wade back into law. And when that bill gets passed by Congress, I will proudly sign it into law. Understand what is happening in our country. Over 20 states have passed what I call Trump abortion bans, because I understand how we got here. The former president handpicked 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. They did as he intended, and in state after state, laws have been passed criminalizing health care providers. I don't know if anyone here has heard most recently the stories out of Georgia. Tragic story about a young woman who died because it appears the people who should have given her health care were afraid they'd be criminalized after the Dobbs decision came down. Laws that make no exception even for rape or incest, which means that you're telling a survivor of a crime of a violation to their body that they have no right to make a decision about what happens to their body next, which is immoral. An approach that doesn't take into account that most people, I think, agree you don't have to abandon your faith or deeply held beliefs to agree the government should not be telling her what to do with her body. If she chooses, she will talk with her pastor, her priest, her rabbi, her imam, but it should not be the government or Donald Trump telling her what to do about her own body and her life. So that's where I stand. We need to put back in place the protection of Roe v. Wade and put that into law.
And those restrictions that are also in.
We need to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade and let an individual, in consultation with her doctor, make the decision based on what she can determine, because she's smart enough to know what's in her best interest instead of having her government tell her what to do, especially a bunch of people in these state capitals who think they're in a better position to tell her what to do than she is to know what's in her best interest.
Before we conclude, Madam Vice President,
There's nothing to say there. This is exactly the answer that needed to be said.
Joyful Warrior has been used to describe
You
your
didn't see that just a
campaign.
minute ago, though. Okay, I'm back to my joyful part.
And your opponent and Republicans have at times weaponized you laughing in campaign ads, for example. Why is joy important to you to insert into this election? And what do you make of Republicans using that as a way to suggest that you're not a serious candidate?
Well, sometimes I think, and I'll say to whoever the young people are who are watching this, there are some times when your adversaries will try and turn your strength into a weakness. Don't you let them. Don't you let them. I find joy in the American people. I find joy and optimism in what I see to be our future and our ability to invest in it. I find joy in the ambition of the people. I find joy in the dreams of the people. I find joy in building community. I find joy in building coalitions. I find joy in believing that the true measure of the strength of a leader is not based on who you beat down, but who you lift up. And I think we should all find joy and have a sense of optimism about who we are as Americans and what we mean to each other and what we can do to lift each other up.
Madam Vice President,
Madam,
Excellent answer.
President Biden spoke to former President Trump after the attempt on his life this weekend. Have you spoken to him?
I have.
And earlier today, I assume?
Yes.
How'd that go? You want to give us some intel?
Sure. I checked on him to see if he was okay.
Yeah.
And I told him what I have said publicly. There's no place for political violence in our country. I am in this election and in this race for many reasons, including to fight for our democracy. And in a democracy, there is no place for political violence. We can and should have healthy debates and discussion and disagreements, but not resort to violence to resolve those issues.
Agreed.
On January 6th, your vehicle was
Answer.
allowed
Good
to
answer.
kind of past a viable pipe bomb. We've seen.
No, I was in the building.
You were in the building. And we've seen what's happening with former President Trump. Do you have full confidence in the Secret Service to
I do.
protect all of you?
I do.
You feel safe for you and your family?
I do. But, I mean, you can go back to Ohio. Not everybody has Secret Service. And
That was a
there are
good
far too many
flip.
people in our country right now who are not feeling safe. I mean, I look at Project 2025, and I look at, like the Don't Say Gay laws coming out of Florida. Members of the LGBTQ community don't feel safe right now. Immigrants or people with an immigrant background
This
don't
was
feel
an
safe
excellent
right now.
answer.
Women don't feel safe right now. And so, yes, I feel safe. I have Secret Service protection. But that doesn't change my perspective on the importance of fighting for the safety of everybody in our country. And doing everything we can to, again, lift people up and not beat people down so they feel alone and are made to feel small and made to feel like they're somehow not a part of it or us.
That was an excellent flip. Brilliantly flipped. Okay. because she's stressing that yes, she has security. Most people don't, right? She's arguing, yes, I feel safe. I mean, I certainly feel safer with them than without them. I mean, yeah, you could make your arguments about, the system of that security, leveling and their whatever, if it's a competence thing or just like the level of like preparedness they are, maybe there could be better actions. Not any agency is going to be perfect though. You can't have a perfect like outcome 100% of the time. Sometimes shit just falls through the cracks. And that's what I've been trying to say, even with the first attempt and even more so with this one. Like they did what they could do with what they had. So, what she's saying here is, yes, I have security. I feel safe, certainly safer than without them, which the majority, everybody else in the fucking country doesn't have. I mean, or the regular people, just like she said, go back to Ohio, look at these people that don't feel safe because of laws that are being passed in these certain states or, whatever the case. Yes, she feels safe, but there's a lot of other people in the country due to, circumstances that were out of their hands, or whatever, that they don't feel safe. And she's trying to work on these things, this is all rhetorical, but nevertheless, she speaks like her initiative is to work on the things to help everybody feel safe. Going back to the gun laws, going back to to the to abortion rights, to issues around racism or bigotry and xenophobia, or like this speaks to every fucking issue that we've spoke about already, and safety, economic, financial safety, everything. So this is a brilliant answer. Brilliant answer.
Madam Vice President, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
I've appreciated this. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
So yeah, I thought that was it. But anyways, all right. So yeah. So yeah, that was the stark difference between what she spoke on in this interview town hall type thing, way different from when Trump did it, and the way he spoke through it. It was like night and day. And like I said, we're talking about two different people here. One that does nothing but speaks about division, speaks about hatred, pointing the finger and everything else. And then the other side is talking about unity, bringing people together, freedom, joy, working towards the ambitions and inspirations of the American people and what you want to do in your life. These are the kinds of things, the kind of rhetoric that brings people together, that we're, have more in common than we have, that divides us. This is completely different rhetoric. Now, you can argue that whether or not you can believe a candidate about what they say, but let's take that to its full, completion here. You can say that, well, she says that, but I don't believe any of that shit. Okay, well, then what about Trump? Whatever he says, you do believe it? So you do believe he's going to divide and spew hatred, or what he says, you don't believe he actually means it? So wait a minute, what is it? You think he's just talking shit, but he actually means well? I mean, it's the spiral and the twisting and everything that you have to do to try to make Donald Trump sound appeasing, sound uh, 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 eloquent. I don't know. Sound like he actually cares. It's like the lies you have to tell yourself. I mean, um, overall, I think she did great in this. Outside of the Gaza issue, which I spoke on and why I have my issues there. Um, but at the same time, I'm kind of I'm holding an alternate opinion on that when it comes to her. Maybe I'm a fool in that. I'll be willing to accept that if that was the case, if that ultimately becomes the case. But everything else, I think she did great. I think she answered the questions for the most part. She did a good job of explaining herself, and she did a really good job of speaking on things that I think the majority of American people, if they listen to it, will walk away from it going, you know what? Shit. I mean, I kind of agree with her. I think she's making sense. Sounds pretty good. I mean, she's not really hating on anybody. Well, except for Trump, maybe. But I mean, you know, as far as when it's talking about the American people, she's not, she's talking about bringing us together. She's talking about, things that will ultimately help us. And I mean, yeah, like I said, there's a difference between words and actions. True. Yeah. Okay. But she can't make any actions until no elector, nobody candidate can make actions before getting into the house. It's all rhetoric. So you either have to decide on what percentage of it you agree with, or what likelihood that of things, issue by issue by issue by issue, that you think a specific candidate will actually manage, whether it's actually making an attempt to do it and actually getting it done, or making an attempt to do it and unfortunately not getting it done for whatever circumstances, whether it's because they didn't really try hard enough, or they were compounded by other things that prevented it, Congress or whatever the case, opposition, whatever, or they don't attempt it at all. And so therefore it doesn't get done. And you have to weigh out which candidate has the biggest likelihood of one of those three, which obviously you want it to not them to do it and actually get it done, right? That's the peak, right? But like, what's the likelihood that they will, of one of those three things that they will do on a particular issue? Weigh it out on a board. This issue, Kamala, Trump. What's the likelihood? What's the likelihood? Next issue, what's the likelihood? What's the likelihood? Next issue, what's the likelihood? And then come out who actually has the best likelihood of actually getting the majority of the things that you'd like to see happen. And I mean, I think you got your answer then. So anyways, this video has been way long, I know, but this was a 45-minute interaction. And so I wanted to go through it, talk about it, watch it, give it its full context. In case you didn't see it, so thank you very much. Let me, again, consider subscribing, like, share, all that good stuff. Comment what you think, how she did in this. You think she did good? You think that I'm giving her too much credit? Maybe not enough. Do you think she did better than Trump in this situation? The things she talked about, issue by issue, did she do well? You can break it down question to question. Did she do good on question one? Did she do good on question two or not? Whatever. Let me know what you think. And yeah. But overall, I think she actually did pretty good. So, and didn't fumble on anything really. So, thank you very much. And yeah, check out my other channels. Till next time, it's been Clear Talk. Peace. I'm out.